Welcome, everyone. It's Larry Johnson, your host for A Principal's Voices. And I have as my special guest today, Kimberly Deugan, or Kim. And she is the founder, I think, or certainly the executive director of Advocates Against Family Violence here in Idaho. And I want to say, welcome, Kim.
Well, thank you, Larry. It's good to be here.
Good, good. Well, it's a pleasure to have you, believe me. And so, what I want to talk about today, I want a little bit more about your background and how you came to do what you're doing. And then once we talk about that, I want you to address some of the issues that you have to confront all the time, because this is an issue that gets a lot of attention, and I'm not so sure that it gets the right focus of the right attention, is my guess. But we'll find out as we get into this. So, Kimberly, tell our audience a little bit about your background, if you would.
I came to AAFV as a survivor myself. I didn't fully understand the full scope of domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, and how many areas of your life it can impact. And after my husband went to prison, I found out that I had lived a life of abuse. I always had my disclaimer out there. Well, I only had a typewriter thrown at me one time, but one time was one too many. And after that experience, I went to a seminar and it was hosted by Advocates Against Family Violence. I started volunteering and then I became the housing coordinator and now I'm the executive director.
Okay. All right. So you are a survivor and you have
Mhm.
firsthand experience of this. Um, uh, has that enabled you? I mean, I guess you obviously, from what I can just tell, come out of it pretty well, meaning you haven't become cynical and indifferent. You've used it as a redemptive experience, correct?
Exactly. And I think that a lot of times everybody's journey is different to true survivorship. And true survivorship can be your entire lifetime. I mean, there's still times, well, I have something trigger me and I have to step back, take a step back and go, okay, wait, now what's going on here? But for the most part, I have gone on to live a beautiful life. That my experience was over 20 years ago. And so I was able to take my experience and move it to help those others. I mean, I always thought if I could just help one other person, then my journey would have been worth it. But that comes from my own personal heart of service. And I love people and I want to be able to help. And I have my little thing. I'm more like Miss Congeniality and I just want world peace. And so I just want to be able to be there and help each individual on their journey to freedom.
Well, now you've been the director of the organization for over a decade now.
15 years, yeah.
All right, so that some would say you're already a survivor because executive directorships and nonprofits tend to change with more rapidity than that. Um, Tell us a little bit about your longevity. How, what sort of relationship do you have with the organization? Have you built your own board? How has it changed during your tenure?
When I started here, it it was just 5 years old, and it had gone through some structural issues. And I jumped in and said, "All right, if we're going to truly help survivors, then we've got to have a really good internal structure, and we've got to be healthy on the inside first." So we dove in. We made a really healthy internal organization, built a very strong board. And board members, they're volunteers. And so a volunteer board service, if you can have a board member for 2 to 4 years, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we've got board members that are so committed to our mission. And I think that that's the thing too, is that every member of our organization is truly committed to the mission. And they have a true heart for that mission.
Now you mentioned about, I think used the word residence. Do you have housing as part of your?
Yeah, we do. We have 14 programs and classes. Our main program started, how we started out was we just wanted to make a change in the community for survivors. At the time we were formed, there weren't really any survivor services. And then a year later, we were able to open the shelter, and that was our main program, was our shelter, to be able to provide that safe place, that sanctuary for individuals who didn't have anywhere to go. They were 50. Most of those that we serve are 50% area median income and below. And so they don't have a place to go. They don't have access to the services that they really need to become a true survivor. And so our shelter has been open for 21 years now. We just celebrated our 20-year anniversary last year,
Congratulations.
and over 17,000 victim services last year. And then below our shelter, we have a 10-acre campus, is where we're at in Caldwell. And below that, below our shelter area, we have 110 units of affordable housing as well, that's open to the community. Our first criteria, though, is to be able to serve those survivors that we work with.
So you have a shelter, and then you
Mhm.
also operate a housing block.
Mhm.
And that's pretty remarkable. How did you achieve that? How did all that get funded, Kim? I mean, did you have
Um,
a sugar daddy that just walked in one day and wrote you a check, or what?
that would have been delightful. I pray for that every day. Well, I did have that happen one time. A beautiful little soul came in, and he's been blessing us for years now. But the housing itself was through funding through the HUD program, and we were able to do it through the Affordable Housing Program. And it's four different areas of funding that it was built with, and then city funded part of it, and just a lot of grant and a lot of paperwork.
Mhm. And then you continue to maintain it. Is how that work? You assume responsibility for it.
We do have a third-party property manager that manages them for us. They're under a separate LLC than AAFV, but we own the LLCs, and they're governed and managed by a third-party property management company.
So does the housing, now that the capital expense has been incurred and it's been there, does it pay for itself, or you have to supplement?
Um, to get them off the ground and to get them where they really need to be, there's affordable housing, and if anybody wants to build affordable housing thinking that they're going to become rich tomorrow, that just isn't going to happen. Affordable housing is an entirely different program than having a rental base where you're doing it as your own property management and you're just investing yourself. Because most of those, like I said, that we serve and that we're qualifying for the housing also is 50% area median income and below. So but through SECA, they come with SECA vouchers. They come through Medicare, Medicaid, and they're at a bare minimum. And so to maintain those and to have the property maintained and the staff and everything that needs to go on with that, it's a huge chunk of change, and
Mhm. I
it
guess what I was asking was, obviously through various sources they're paying some of the rental costs, but as a unit, as a project, um, how much deficit spending is it? I mean, how much philanthropy do you have to supplement to make it fly?
Right now, we're not having to do any philanthropy for the housing. The philanthropy mostly that we're supporting is our other 14 programs and classes that we offer, and all of the staff for the shelter, for our community outreach program. We have a youth program that's taken off. We've got 4 service specialists, and each one of them are at capacity with those youth that we're serving from the community. We have our daycare. It also needs to be supplemented. And so the other 14 programs and classes that we have within our program, that's where the philanthropy piece comes in, and where we're where we're relying on our community partners to help support the programs that we have.
So there's quite a bit going on over there. I actually am not that far from you. I'm just down the road. Well, I'm on the south side of town, Caldwell. You're on the north side, right? I think I know where you are, but that's a lot going on. I mean, this isn't a huge community. It's not small, but it's not huge. So I'm presuming that the people you serve, the people that come to you, are primarily almost all female. Are there any males involved?
We serve a very large male sector as well. We don't house them in the shelter. The shelter is funded only for women, and so it is a women's shelter only. But the men that we serve, we have housing vouchers that we can use, and we have great community relations with other housing programs that we can move them into a safe place while they're still receiving the services. They receive the same services that any other individuals. Our services don't have any boundaries. Domestic abuse, sexual assault doesn't have boundaries, and you can
Okay. Well, that surprises me a little bit. You know, the typical image is the battered wife. All right, that's the stereotypical image. Now, what you're telling me is it's not quite like that. That it's a little more dynamic. Can you talk about that a little bit?
You know, like I said, domestic abuse doesn't have any boundaries. And I've said this from day one. It doesn't care if you're yellow, pink, black, or white. It doesn't care if you're a day old or 105 years old. It doesn't care if you're male or female. It doesn't care if you're a child. And those are the most innocent victims. And those are the ones that really truly have my heart. But when you are going into a relationship, and I mean, you've experienced relationships and you go into a relationship and there's that euphoric phase and everybody's in love and and it doesn't just happen. I mean, you don't go on a date and the first date you get battered and you go, oh, I want to stay in this relationship.
I want more.
That's not,
Give me
yeah,
more.
right. You know, like that's not how it happens. And it's a slow cultivating circle, and it happens on a regular basis. And there's a oh, I love you so much, and then it starts to get a little worse, and then the next thing you know, you're battered, and then there's a the makeup phase, and here comes all of the flowers and all the I love you, and you don't fall in love with that person because they're a batterer. You've already fallen in love, and now you have these children. And to think that now you're in this position, and it is never, ever, ever the victim's fault. Ever is it the victim's fault? That batterer has full control, and they know it, and they will keep that individual in that status and in that spot for as long as they possibly can. And a lot of times, their animals are being abused as well.
Now,
It's a vicious cycle.
is it always physical, or is there some things that are just mentally kind of controlling?
Yeah, there's so many phases to abuse. There's mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, and most of the time it's every area of your life has been impacted in one way or another by this abuse of some sort. And it's like I said, it's a slow happening, it's a slow pattern. And I remember when and in my even in my own situation, I knew that the sky was blue and I could look out and say, wow, it's a beautiful blue sky today. But by the time I had had a conversation, I was convinced, yeah, you're right, it is a purple sky today. And it's just that mindset that they get inside the head, and you're just truly victimized every single day.
They can tell you that you can tell it's raining when it's the sun shining, and
Absolutely.
oh, I see that rain out there. I see it.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so, how do people come to you? I mean, do they come to you? They come knock on your door. Please help me. He's after me. Do they come through a referral through some other person? How does that happen?
Every way that you even just stated. We'll have them come knock on the shelter door. We'll have them show up down here at our community center where our administration offices are, and they'll come seeking the help. We've had them actually staying in our parking lot in their car, waiting for us to open the administration building the next morning so that they could receive the services. The police department, hospitals, we have great relationships with so many different community partners, Southwest District Health, and we're getting referrals all the time. And I don't know that there will ever be a program that you could have capacity big enough to meet the need in the community. What we know statistically is one in three individuals will be impacted by some form of abuse, and that's only of what's reported. And there's so much that
Let's
goes
pause,
unreported because of
let's
shame.
pause for a moment. You said 1 in 3.
Mhm.
That's a third of the population.
Yep.
Um, that's hard for me to process, Kim. I mean, I'm not doubting you, I'm not disputing you, but it comes as a surprise. All right.
Mhm.
And this is typical, or is it peculiar to your community, our community?
No, it's across the United States. It's across the nation. There's so much abuse that is going on out there, and a lot of it truly does go unreported. And there's human trafficking, and there's child abuse, and there's the elder abuse is is compounding every single day in our communities. And there's just so many different facets of abuse, and so many different parts and factors of our community that truly are being abused, that their voices aren't being heard, and they need to be heard.
So I want to approach there. I presume you get referrals. You ought to go see Sally. All right. What if you get there and Sally isn't interested and she's pushing you away?
That's the thing about our services is we don't go and pick anybody up, and we don't go that they're referred to us, and it's by referral, and then they choose on whether or not they want to seek our services. And if they don't seek our services, then there's really nothing that we can do about it. We work through the court systems, and we're able to work through the courts and be able to help a lot of them. But even then, when you're sitting down one to one with them, they make the choice on whether to receive the service
So,
or not.
so there's an initial intake of interest, and then it's their decision, and then the court could refer them to you. So you obviously have a good relationship with the judicial system. Um, I'm sure you've gotten to a situation where someone shows up at your door and you've figured out either directly or indirectly that they may be in some sort of danger. Do you make referrals to law enforcement?
Oh, absolutely. We work so closely with law enforcement, and law enforcement, medical. We're all a tight knit family. Even though we're a community based program, we still work so very closely with all the system programs, because it we truly all have to be working together to get this. And this was honestly, domestic abuse and sexual assault was the very first pandemic. And we have all worked so hard to get us to a different place so that it's not happening in our communities. But the fact is it's there.
Mhm. Do you, I mean, what would be, I mean, of course, it varies, I guess, from place to place, but where we are in Caldwell, it's a manageable size community. It's about 50,000 people, a part of a much larger metro area. Um, how is it viewed in this area? And what I'm getting for, is this something that's recognized? Is it something people want to avoid? I mean, oh, there's Kim. She runs that shelter for those battered women. Oh my God. I mean, tell me about some of the community attitudes. That's what I'm asking.
I think it's been stereotyped as, and especially in our local communities, that um, it's the victim's fault that she stays there. And we hear it all the time. Well, why doesn't she just leave? Well, the greater question to ask is, why are they offending her? Why are they offending him? Why it's not like I said, it's not ever the victim's fault. And so why doesn't she just leave? Because the majority of homicides that happen is when they are trying to flee and leave that situation. And so we'll hear well, it just doesn't happen in this community. Really? Yeah, it does. It's happening right next door to you. But nine times, but 9 times out of 10, you don't really truly know what's going on next to you. You don't know what happens behind those closed walls. And unless you've been trained to spot and to see the behaviors and to recognize certain signs of it, you would never know. Like I said, one in every third individual that we come in contact, 1/3 of our population, whether it's the gal that's checking you out at the grocery store, whether it's your nurse at the doctor's office, your dentist, hygienist, your dentist. I mean, there are so many people that are impacted by abuse, and we just simply don't want to recognize it as a community, because that, I think, it factors in people's minds that um, that means that you have a bad community or something, or that it just doesn't happen here. They just don't want it to happen here.
It's so people take it as a reflection on the community. There's the shame element involved with it. Um, you mentioned daycare. Now, do you have, I presume part of the daycare is for women who need to work and they need to have a place to care for their children. Do you have minors that are part of your program?
Yeah, our daycare, that program, when I came in as executive director, it was one of the first programs I really wanted to cut because when I ran the numbers, it was going to run in the red, because it's not a big enough a big enough daycare to really meet the overhead and then with the demands of the kids that we have to serve. And so I truly didn't want to have the daycare. And then I went back and I read the grant and it said you're going to have the daycare, and we opened it up, and that program has become the one dearest to my heart because those little ones that are in that daycare and registered there, they're the most innocent victims. They were born into that family. But the beautiful thing about it is we're able to serve those little ones. And then as those parents are coming through, we're able to work with them to get them to have a happy, healthy home, give them healthy parenting skills, teach them how to cook healthy meals, teach them financial literacy and how to work through all the factors of being a single mom or a single dad and having 3 or 4 kids and trying to figure out how to juggle it all. We're there to help support them in all of that. And so that's become one of the most beautiful programs I think that we really truly, well, in my heart, that we have.
Um, I know you've talked about the your revenue formula, how you want to put all that together, and of course, by virtue of what you're involved in, there's going to be public support for some of that. There's also the philanthropic piece of it. Um, Let me ask you a question. Put all that aside for a minute. What is it that you'd really like to do that you haven't done yet?
Honestly, I want to save all of Canyon County from domestic abuse and sexual assault, be able to slap a lock on the door and say, we've done it. But in reality, right now, I know that the services with the growth that's continuing to come in, knowing that 1/3 of every single individual that's moving into this community is going to need our services at some time, the projected growth that continues and all of that, I know that the need for our services is going to continue to be there. And so ultimately, I would love to have a community center that has all of our services that the other partnering agencies that we work with to have us in one central location. So our shelter is there, our daycare is there, all of the services that we provide through all of our other service providers is right there in one location so that there's not every individual coming having to go to 16 different places to receive a service. I mean, that's trauma enough, without having all of the other trauma there factored into it. But I would love to have a big community center where we can all work out of together.
Well, that's a worthy dream. That's a
Mhm.
worthy dream. So, right now, what's your rough ratio between public funding and philanthropic funding?
Uh, Public funding through all of our grants and all of our other funders, we're probably right at about, no, I know we're right at 75% funded through the grants. And that's a very, very high ratio for me to have
Well, it
to.
is. Well, it limits your flexibility, as you know, um, and it limits your renewability. They and the philanthropic funds are the most renewable, the most sustainable. Well, we'll get into other stuff later, but I just want to make the promo for the podcast, and that is that, believe it or not, there is an incredible amount of philanthropic funding that's out there. Now, I said out there. Okay. That means it has to be engaged. It's not going to walk through the door. It never works that way. But there are even there, it's there. I can tell you it's there. So, uh, so that's, I think, if you have this dream of a facility and consolidation of what you're doing to more unify your sources, that's where you're going to be looking to make that happen. So, okay. So Kim, can you tell it? Can you pull a story? I love stories. Now you can change the names to protect the guilty and the innocent and all that, but can you give us a story of someone who came to you and whose life has been transformed as a result of getting of availing themselves of your work?
Yeah, at one time in our shelter, we had 4 generations in the shelter at the same time. We had grandma, mom, daughter, and granddaughter. Um, and
Four,
that doesn't
let's
happen
make that
very often.
let's make that clear. 4 generations, and you had grandma, daughter.
Mom, daughter,
Okay,
and baby. So, great granddaughter to this grandma. This daughter was this grandma, and this mom was this daughter of this mom. So, the whole
one
family
family.
tree was there.
One family.
One family, one family, and they were there all together. Different situations, different, yeah, different situations. Came at different times, but within just a few days of each. And we had been working with mom and grandma, and the two of them, I mean, they had been in their relationships for very long times. And they said, we're just going to go back. And we said, you know what, that's okay. That's fully your choice. We're not going to make you do anything you don't want to do. But here's your safety. We helped them do their safety plan. They knew how to get a hold of us again, and they know where we're at. But the daughter, the granddaughter, said, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't go back. I've got my little daughter to think about. And we said, great, you're going to stay with us for as long as you need to. So she stayed with us for 2 years. She was with us,
2 years.
working through everything that, 2 years. And she and her daughter both, and working through the horrible situation that she was coming out of, and getting all of the legal work done, getting all of her education. We helped her get an education. She went to school to be a dental hygienist. She graduated dental hygiene school. We got her in her first housing apartment and helped her get her first car, and went through the whole thing with her. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful, um, I guess, life renovation to watch, to see such transformation in her and her little one. And then she moved out, went on her own. And then a couple of years later, she called. And when we get those calls back, we always kind of just, we always go on the defense because we think, oh no, what's happening now? But she called and she goes, no, I just wanted to tell you, I got remarried and I now have a set of twins. And I am so grateful for Hope Store and the services that you all provided for me, because I would not be where I am today without
Okay. All right. That's a remarkable thing.
you.
Absolutely. Okay. This is great.
And
Boy.
that's one of many that we've been able to serve.
Well, and that's what I presume that this is typical. This is typical. Um, Now I'm going to ask the reverse. And that is, can you give me an example of something that unfortunately turned tragic?
The whole reason that we're here is because of a tragedy. Angie Leon was murdered in front of her mom and 3 children 22 years ago. And that is the whole reason that we are here today, is because her ex, well, he wasn't really quite an ex yet, but he showed up at her condo because she had already left the situation, was trying to make a life of freedom. He had just been released from jail and showed up on her doorstep the morning that she was getting ready to go to work, and murdered her in front of her 3 babies. Those are tragic. And that's not the only one that we've been through.
Now that was
Um,
a that
but
was
that's why we're here.
that was a very public case, was it not? And am I correct in assuming that this man was just recently sentenced for that crime?
Mhm.
It's a sen-
No, that was that was another one that we worked with. And the mom, she was murdered, and he fled. and they didn't know where he was for years and years. And then they finally just found him, and he was finally just prosecuted, and he is now serving his prison term. But, I mean, here he is. She's gone, and her children are still suffering the consequences of all of that life happening. And he flees, and he's living his life of Riley, doing his fun thing. And then he now is sentenced to prison. Well, okay, that's great. He's in prison, but he's still getting his 3 hots and a cot. He's still getting his dental. He's still getting all of his services that he could ask for. So he's still alive, and he still has a life, but she doesn't. She's gone.
Mhm. So it was that first example that was the catalyst for founding this organization. Um, how did that come about? This, I mean, did someone know someone? I mean, how did that catalyze to make this organization come to be?
It was the victim witness coordinator that was working on the case, and she saw such a strong need for services for individuals in this community. And she said, "We got to do something." And so she started working with others in the courthouse and others that had a strong heart and a desire for the same mission. And they formed the first board, formed the LLC, and the next thing they know, they're serving victims. And then a year later, they've got a shelter. And now here we are 21 years later with 14 programs and classes and 110 units of housing and a shelter, and doing amazing things on our compound, on our complex.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That is
Mhm.
amazing, Kim. And you're very you're very prescient, and you understand that the community is growing considerably. We have lots of people moving in here from other parts of the country. Idaho is a growing state, and they all bring their issues with them. Um, in fact, it's you've heard that people will often move in the hopes of leaving their issues wherever they are, but they don't. They bring it with them. That doesn't change. So I've enjoyed this for one thing, but for another, is there something that we haven't covered that you'd like to make sure that we do? Anything you'd like to say or ask?
I think I just want to make sure that the community knows that this is an issue in their community. And like I said, we don't just serve Caldwell. We serve the entire Treasure Valley. Right now, we've got 8 sexual assault cases that we're working out in Jim County with. We've got cases that we're working over in Nampa, in Mountain Home. I mean, we're serving individuals from all over the Treasure Valley, and we even service individuals who have come to us from a referral throughout the nation. We've seen, individuals from Florida, North Carolina, Chicago, and they come to live in our shelter because it's safe here for them. But I just
Well,
really want
let's talk about that for a minute. So then
to.
you get out of area referrals where people want to come to a place that's sufficiently geographically removed to allow them some safety.
Yes.
Now, are you a part of a larger network, or how does that work?
Yeah, we work through the Idaho shelter, or not Idaho, the National Shelter Program, and it's a large um, organization that we all belong to, that we can refer to each other in the need, in the time.
That's fascinating. Well, that
Mhm.
that truly links you with all the other organizations in the country that do the same thing, and you're providing that kind of service. Um, and I guess it reverses itself. People who want to be so separate from Idaho that whoever it is can't find them down in Georgia somewhere. So, that, see, I didn't know that. So, see, I love doing these, Kim, because I learn
Mhm.
something every time I do these interviews. Um, and I can see why that's important. I really do.
Mhm.
Um,
It
any,
is. They have a place to be. But
any,
I just want the community to know that we're here. We're here to help serve. We're here to engage the community. We love our community partners. We love individuals to come help serve with us. What if you have a heart for a mission? This is the one to get involved in, because we truly are saving lives in our community, and I think that holds a lot of merit, and we just really love our community partners.
well, I love it. I love it. Thank you very, very much. You know, everyone, I've been really having a wonderful discussion with Kim Deugan, who is the executive director of Advocates Against Family Violence in my own community. And here I'm just down the road, and I've learned a lot that I didn't know before. So thank you, Kim, for taking your time and sharing it with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Larry. It was a pleasure.
Next time, another episode, another person doing great things.